It is Monday, January 4th, 2021, and this is the iPhoneography Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm joined, as always, with my trusted co-host and friend, Dave Podner. How you doing, Dave?
Doing great. How you doing today?
I'm not doing too bad. We have a guest on with us tonight who is no stranger to the show, Matt Hoffman. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem. We thought that we would talk this week about, since, it was Christmas not too long ago, and I'm sure there's been a lot of people out there probably got a new phone, or maybe even their first iPhone for Christmas, and maybe thinking about starting to take some pictures. So I thought we'd see what kind of information we can conjure up between the three of us here, and give some people some advice, some tips, and whatnot. What do you guys think?
Sounds like a plan.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, the three of us, we've had iPhones for seems like forever. And, when we first got them, we were sponges for information on what we could do for, photography and whatnot. And back then, just about the time I started anyway, and I'm sure you guys are probably not far off from that, there was a plethora of apps to choose from, and filters and stuff like that were really big back then. Things have changed, I would say, in the quote unquote landscape of iPhone photography, and maybe the whole filter scene isn't what it used to be. It's certainly different now because it's more video related for like TikTok and Snapchat and all that stuff. But for just photography alone, I think there's a few things that maybe people could to take a look at. And Matt, since you're the guest, why don't you start and kind of give folks an idea of what the first thing they might want to do would be.
Okay. Well, I guess starting from the super duper beginning, if you are a beginner to iPhone photography, it's maybe likely that maybe you're a beginner to having the iPhone in general. And one thing to know is that a real easy way to access the camera on the iPhone is basically just to swipe to the side, after you do your Face ID or actually even now when on your unlock screen, there's the camera icon and gives you real quick access to the camera.
Yeah, you just press and hold and your camera just pops open.
Yeah, I guess actually the swipe to the side doesn't work anymore. Maybe that was a different iOS. It does?
Yeah, really? Yep. Swipe from the right to the left.
Yeah.
And it just pops open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it works. You don't even have to unlock the phone. That's what makes it great. Or if you have to be wearing a mask and you're outside.
Oh, yeah.
Like most people should be wearing a mask when you're outside. And you want to take a photo without having to unlock your phone, just kind of. And if you, let's say you happen to be living in a cold area like all three of us are, and you have the touch sensitive gloves, you can still swipe with the gloves on.
Which is nice. I have a pair, but I don't wear them enough. But yeah, so that's bare bones basics for sure, Matt. So anything you want to say about the native camera
app? Well, I'll tell you, in my opinion, it's gotten good. I find myself using it more and more over the third-party apps, especially now that Apple has their own RAW format, the Pro RAW format, which you're able to access within the Photos app. But I kind of feel like everything that you need, at least to get started anyway, is right there in that app. You can, be in your photo mode, and if your phone has multiple lenses, you're able to quickly, change between the different lenses. Turn on and off live photos, turn your flash on and off. You could even change the aspect ratio of your photo. So if you want your photos to be like, like the widescreen format, like 16:9, you could do that. Turn on like a timer function if you're setting up a self-portrait or something to that effect. Just tons of stuff. There's even little filters within the Photos app that you can just select one before you even take the picture, so you can see, right away. You can see it basically live what the filter is going to make the picture look like, which is kind of cool. Yeah, it's a great app.
Yeah, and as far as quote unquote manual control, I guess that's really what it is. There is some limited functionality there too. Maybe not as much as third-party apps, but focus lock and exposure. Focus lock and exposure lock, is by tapping and holding the screen until you'll see it pop up. I mean, you'll know what's happening. But you can also just tap on the screen and you can slide your finger up and down to increase or decrease the brightness of the image, or overexpose or underexpose, to be, use the correct term. So yeah, it's really becoming a powerful camera app, and I got to agree with you. I've been using it more with my 12 Pro Max than I've ever used it with any other phone. I mean, I'm a diehard halide guy, and I use First Light and at times too. But boy, oh boy, with the Apple Pro RAW, even though it's available in other apps, it sure makes it really easy and convenient to use it.
Well, I think with the built-in, Greg, when you were talking about when we all got started, a lot of the times you had the extra apps because they were filling in gaps and this is something Apple's done over the years. They'll give you what they consider the vast majority of people want, but if you want the edge case, there's apps for that. When we started, you didn't have a pano mode. If you wanted panoramic, you had to get an app to do that.
That's right, yeah.
Or if you wanted HDR, you needed an app for that. So if you were like, oh, this is going to be a really bright situation, or, there's obviously going to be a bright sky and HDR would help. You couldn't take an HDR photo with the app, but, you could download an app and take specific HDR photos. Or if you really wanted a panoramic view, or like, oh, I'm going to go out to this overlook and I want a panoramic view. Well, you better make sure you're home first, get a panoramic app that'll do it, and then have it stitch it together.
Yeah, that's
then
right.
Apple started to add little things in, like, oh, by the way, now just swipe and you can do your panoramic, and then, oh, you can make larger panoramas. And now I think they're just the size of the panorama now are just to the built-in one, just so, I don't want to say ridiculously large, but you can make them so large.
Yeah.
And how much they let you do now.
So when you say large, do you mean like the amount of panning that you can do from one side to the other? Yeah.
The amount of panning and how it stitches it together, pretty amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know what the degree of the view is, like whether it's like 160, but it's almost 180. It's just ridiculously wide how, the view you can get with a panel. And excuse me. So that's that's kind of the native app in a nutshell. It's very powerful. It's a very good way to get started.
Can I piggyback like one other like tip regarding the native app?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so when you open it up, there's the shutter button uh, down at the bottom in the center, the big white dot, which is typically what I press to take a picture.
Oh yeah.
But if you kind of like more of like a camera feel, you can use the volume up or down button to take a photo, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of cool for people that are just maybe used to like a point and shoot, or coming from that sort of camera background. Now here's what I really want to talk about, and this is taking pictures in burst mode. So it used to be that if you held down the shutter button on the screen, you would take pictures in burst mode. So that's like it's rapidly taking, a whole bunch of pictures in rapid succession, and you would use that if you're, trying to capture action, or just some kind of moment that you don't want to miss. Maybe you're taking pictures of kids or something, and you want to get that perfect shot. Burst mode is perfect for that. Well, now with the new iOS, if you hold down the shutter button, instead of it doing a burst mode, it starts recording video. And I remember, right after updating the iOS 14, not knowing that it was going to, and
Yeah.
missing some pictures that I wanted because it was recording video instead of, shooting in burst mode. So
Yeah.
going back to those volume buttons, if you want to do burst mode, you hold down the volume buttons, and you can hold down. Actually, the volume up button is the burst mode, and volume down actually records video, just like the shutter button on the screen.
Now, does it record the video just while you're holding it, or is that just like an on-off switch?
Yes. No,
Okay.
just while you're holding it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. See, I didn't know that.
And
Yeah.
that's only for the newer phones too.
Yeah, I think it started in the 11.
Yeah, because my 10, if I hold down the shutter, I just tried it. With my 10, if I hold down the shutter button, it does burst mode.
Okay.
So this is one thing that I will criticize Apple for, is that they're, especially with the 11 especially, they started to change the way the built-in camera app worked, but only for the newer versions. Like Matt, when you were saying about how you can change the aspect ratio of the photo you want to take, I don't have that ability.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know if someone's getting in on it. This is something I just don't know. If someone's getting a new SE, are those guts old because they're older guts? Are those guts old enough that, or are they new enough where they're doing the new 11 camera or the older camera?
Well, I will say it works on my 10s Max as well.
You mean yours works more like what the newer ones do?
Yeah.
Okay, so it must be the 10 is the difference there. So, but as one thing, just like, well, that's the other thing is like, I would say if let's say you're either maybe switch over from Android, because I can't believe there's that many people who don't have a smartphone who are adults. I mean, if you're like, oh, my kid just turned 13 and they just got their first iPhone, I understand that. But if you're an adult, I think the market saturation for smartphones is well in the 90s, if not upper 90s for the US. And but if you're coming from Android or just, it's like the greatest thing about, I think, digital cameras in general and smartphone cameras is there's no waste. You know, if you hit a button and it looks messed up, you can just delete it.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely experiment. Like if you notice a feature or you're like, hey, I heard Matt say do this. I wonder if I should try it. Say, yeah, try it, please.
Oh yeah.
Don't hold back.
Sure.
Don't hold back.
Let me say one more quick thing, and then I'll shut up for a while. That is about the native app, and I think it's something that's not immediately obvious. So I noticed when I got my new phone and fired up, everything up, by default, the native camera was set up to where at the top and bottom, so basically like outside of the frame of the photo, those what used to be black bars, like where you would select if you're doing like photo or video and where your shutter button is and stuff, those were translucent. And that actually really screwed me up at first, because I assumed that the entire screen, because I could see stuff on the entire screen, even though the menu portions were over the top and the bottom, I thought that was the picture. And so I was framing shots to fill the entire screen, and then in reality I was only capturing the center, 2/3 of the frame. So basically it's a mode that allows you to see outside the frame, and that's what it's called. And if you find it distracting, like I did, you can go into the settings app and go into camera, and you gotta you don't really have to scroll down to find it, but it's called view outside the frame, and you could toggle that off. And when you go back to your camera app, the top and bottom sections will be black, like I think they should be, and it will not be confusing anymore about what you're actually taking a picture of.
Yeah, that's no good.
And I just turned it off because that was driving me crazy too.
Now, Matt, let me ask you something. When you go widescreen, you said you can select to shoot 16:9, right?
Yeah.
When you do that, does your full screen show up and it gets translucent, or is it just that little box gets?
No, so so keep in mind the iPhone is not 16:9. It's bigger than that.
Right.
All right. It's longer rather. So basically the way it shows up is menu, which is like where I would select, like if I want live photo on and off or my flash on or off. That is still black. But then the shutter button and, selecting whether it's photo mode or video mode and that kind of stuff, that actually falls within the frame of the picture.
Okay.
So, but it's not as confusing as that view outside the frame, because,
right.
I don't.
It looks
I don't know.
It
This
looks
is
the
just
same as when you're in video mode, basically, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
Dave. If you turn on your video,
Right.
go to video mode. That's exactly what it looks like.
Okay. That makes more sense then. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So it's anyway. I just remember getting my phone, and almost immediately I went on a business trip overnight to Cincinnati, and went to go take pictures of the city skyline. And, it was set up with that view outside the frame, and I shot like all these pictures, but I had them cropped so that it filled the whole screen. And I thought that was what I was taking pictures of. And then it was like crazy cold out that night. And I go back to my car and I go and I look at the photos, and I'm like, wait, what the heck is this? This isn't what I was taking a picture of. This is only part of the picture. And then I had to go back out and reshoot everything. and I was highly annoyed because it was so cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
So,
my.
um, yeah. So those are some really good points, Matt. Because, and I don't think I would have thought to have mentioned them myself. And
Yeah.
uh, that whole issue with when you go to, you're in the camera mode and you could see that translucency in the background. That was driving me crazy, but I just never took the time to go into the settings and shut that off. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, no,
Dave,
definitely. 'Cause, yeah, that would have drove me crazy if that was a permanent feature.
yeah,
I mean, especially since you can't. If that was, well, here's the actual photo you're getting. I understand you want to show it as wide as possible, but it's like, and I remember the presentation when they rolled out that feature. And the idea was, well, you're taking a picture and oops, you just don't get the timing right, but we capture more than you were shooting for, so you can just change it a little bit and reconfigure it and catch that little bit which was right outside the frame, and it sounded good, but it's confusing, which is bad, always bad.
Mm-hmm. Anything else to add on the native camera app, Dave, before we go on to other things here?
Not that I can think of. I honestly, I think one of the features that, like I said, it like with you guys, it's pretty much my default for average situations. Also because it does have the live photos, which if you have kids or animals, live photos can be a great saver.
Yeah, that is true.
And I know there are apps that do the live photos, but just the fact of if you want to take a picture quickly and someone's moving, or just, you, especially with dogs or cats, or I imagine it can be with kids too, but you can't exactly tell a dog or cat, hold that pose right there, because the minute you talk to them, they turn their head and they either run towards you or, something changes about it. Or live photo, you can say, okay, I got them blurry because their head was turning, but I can hit the live photo and go back just a little bit of time. And then that's everything. If you're taking live photos a lot, just don't take the photo and move the camera down. Take your photo and wait a half a second before you move your hand off of the photo, because you can maybe get yourself a little bit of wiggle room if there's movement one way or the other.
Yeah, because it's taking, basically it's almost like shooting a video for a second and a half before and a second and a half after you tap that shutter button. Like it's 3 seconds worth of exposure time. So that is something to remember. So as far as capturing goes for, people who have never done this before, or, just got a new phone and are just getting started in it, do you think it's worth mentioning third-party camera apps, or do you think that's getting in a little too deep?
I think it's worth it. I think there's a couple really.
Okay, let's just give one of our favorites out there. Okay. And that way we don't. We don't want to overload people. Yeah, we also don't want to overload either. Yeah. So, Dave, give us your favorite.
Sure, my favorite's Camera Plus 2. And I originally purchased it when I got my first iPhone, so that's around 8 years ago. And it's also one of the reasons when I was looking at it on the App Store before when we were getting ready, and I noticed, because at the time, Camera Plus, it says camera and then the plus sign, so the addition sign, then space, the number 2, because there's other ones which look very similar and have similar names. It was the first one that you could purchase that if you wanted to go just a half a step, like I said, went back then, the built-in camera app was a lot more limited. If you just want to do that little half a step more, it helped out. The two things I mostly use it for now, it has a stability mode. So you basically fire up the app, and down below you can hit around the shutter just a little plus to get additional options. And if you do stability, it won't take the picture until it notices no movement on the camera, which is if you're trying to get a little extra crispness and clarity, especially with even though the new phones have, with the additional stabilization, it still helps that the phone's not jiggling around.
Yeah.
So that actually is nice. You hit now. The only problem is you hit the shutter. You have to wait until it detects a small enough movement before it'll take the picture. So if your hand's a little, jiggly, or if it's cold outside, or if you're stretching out your hand to get a picture, let's say over a crowd, it won't work well. But if you're looking for that little extra crispness, that's nice. The other thing I use it for, well, two other things. Macro mode. So if you want a really up close picture or something like of a flower or something on that nature, it's really good with stability also. So since you're you're just inches away from what you're taking a picture on, you're zoomed in, any little movement can really mess up a photo, but having that stability with the macro is nice. And because I don't have the ability to do it, and if you have a newer phone, you probably have it, but Camera Plus 2 will let you do panoramic 16:9 photos, both vertically and horizontally.
Oh, nice.
So if you want to get, let's say, a flagpole picture and you don't want to use the panoramic because it can make vertical lines a little wonky, maybe we don't want them to be, you have the ability to do 16:9 and get a nice vertical shot there.
Yeah. These third-party apps some of them are really feature-filled for sure. Matt, do you got a favorite?
Well, so I'm not going to steal your thunder, so I'm going to pick a different.
Actually, I already had a different one in mind, so if you want to steal it, you go ahead.
All right. So 100% I use Halide more than any other camera app, and mostly what I like Halide for is shooting RAW in the RAW format. There's a few other things that are maybe like a little bit more advanced, but they're definitely things that I enjoy about Halide. One of which is that it can show me a histogram, which is basically just a display of the tonal values of the picture, so I could see if it basically gives me a representation of the exposure, just like in a graph. So I can see if, maybe a highlight is too bright and I'm not going to have any detail in it, or conversely, maybe a shadow is too dark and now it's completely black, so I won't have any detail in it. And that is good for a couple reasons, one of which could be artistic. Maybe I want a highlight to be white or a shadow to be black, but at the same time, maybe I don't want that, and it gives me an opportunity to adjust my exposure. And I could just see that information on the fly just by looking at the histogram, which is pretty cool. It can do portrait mode, which I don't really ever use it for that, but mainly just shooting raw photos is what I like the most about it. And it has a lot of really good manual control as well. So, once you kind of get comfortable with what you're doing and want to kind of have a little bit more artistic control, it gives you much better manual control over the exposure of your photos than the native camera app does, in my opinion. Yeah,
and it's a really well-designed app too. I found it very intuitive to use when it first came out. It's just a good design, and it's there's no zoom in it like you can with the Apple camera app. The developers, I think their philosophy is if you want to zoom, use your feet. Walk in and walk out. Right? They don't want to overload their app with a bunch of stuff like that. And the app, to download the app, it's less than 20 megabytes, so it's a real lightweight app to put on your phone. But it is definitely one of my favorites for sure. But I will mention Halide's sister app, Spectre. Now, what that is for doing long exposure photography that you can do without a tripod. It's as simple as holding your hand still and taking the photo, and you can get anywhere from a 3 to a 9 second exposure. There's three settings: 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 9 seconds, and it has. What it does is it takes advantage of the built-in stabilization of whatever technology the iPhone you have uses, and it really works well with the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max. Well, the Max especially, because it has that in-body sensor stabilization. It's the only iPhone that has that, but it does work really well on other iPhones, like my 10s Max. It's 2 years old. It has optical stabilization, so it kind of takes advantage of that. But what you can do with this long exposure, you could do light trails, excuse me, get that smooth flowing water look in a waterfall. It's a great app for beginners or people who've never tried this type of thing before. To do that, you can do it with live photos in the native camera app. You can get these looks with live photos, but Spectre gives you a little bit more control, with the length of the exposure, and you can adjust the brightness of the image up and down. It's just really, really, really well done, and it's well designed again, like Halide. I forget how much it costs in the App Store. It's not a free app, but if that's the kind of thing you want to do, it's really well worth it, and well worth the price of it. I forget what it is. I'm in Canada. Dave and Matt are in the States, so the numbers are going to be different. But I believe in Canada it was probably $5.99 or something like that. I just don't know what it was, but I should write down these prices when I buy stuff so I know what to say they were. But yeah, it's really good for that. And I'm going to throw another one in there real quick, and it's First Light, and that's made by the folks who make Filmic Pro. It's a professional grade video camera app for the iPhone. And what makes First Light so interesting is that you can give it these looks, they call it, and it looks like different film simulations, and you can do all that stuff before you even take the shot. So you can play around with these settings, and it's intuitive to use as well. But you can play around with these settings and see how the image is going to look before you take the shot. And there's even one for infrared, and it's really cool. Anything that's green in the frame turns out to be red. So Filmic First Light, and these are all going to be in the show notes, so you can always find them there. But it's a really cool app as well, and it does RAW. It can do some of the advanced stuff too, but it's really, really cool to play around with. So those are some. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to say the pricing real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
The Spectre, the long exposure app, Spectre camera, here in the U.S. in the App Store, that app is $3.99.
Okay, so it's probably going to be $5.99 in Canada.
Yeah, well worth it in my opinion to be able to do handheld long exposures.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually used that app just yesterday quite a bit. I started out using another app called Slow Shutter Cam, which is also for doing long exposures. And then after a little while, I just got kind of tired of dealing with my tripod, so I switched to Spectre and got really good results.
Yeah.
And then going back to Halide, I forgot that Halide went to kind of more of the subscription model. Yeah. So it is $11.99 a year But if you want to do just the one-time purchase, buy it once and be done with it, it is $39.99.
Right. And it's free to
So
try for a
I
week too, I
realize,
think.
yeah, I realize that is expensive for what everyone's used to for apps, but it's a really good app.
Yeah. Do you happen to have the prices on First Light and Camera Plus 2? Just while we're at it here.
Let's say Camera Plus 2 this is one thing that shocked me. It's $7.99 now. So when I originally purchased it way back, it was, I think, $3.99 or $2.99, but they had filters for editing, and you could buy like what they call the Hollywood pack, and it would have different filters that you can do editing because you can shoot and edit in it. And the filter packs were additional in-app purchases, while they just went to a straight, buy one. We're just going to charge you once, and you get everything with the app. So it's up to $8 now. So it's a bit pricey for a secondary camera app. That is true. Yeah.
Powerful in all that it can do.
Yeah. And it is a one-time purchase. It's not a subscription.
Yeah.
And Filmic First Light is also the same. It is $7.99.
Yeah. Yeah, they were going to go subscription, but then they heard a lot of negative feedback from people about that, so then they changed it to a one-time price. And now I think, I'm not sure, but I think there may be in-app purchases for some of the film simulators, film simulation looks. I'm not sure. Or it could be just a one-time price.
Yeah, I'm just checking the website now, and there's no in-app purchase listed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So so it's another one that's. I mean, if you're gonna start doing this kind of thing, once you kind of investigate these apps and you like what you see, good grief, the money that you're paying for these things isn't that bad. I mean, Halide's a little pricier than the other ones, but it's worth it. Like, I use it so much that I made the one-time purchase. Now I own everything for life for that app, because I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it a lot. And First Light, when it first came out, I right off the bat, I took a year subscription on it. It was like, in Canada, it was like $13. And shortly after that, they decided to just switch it over to one-time purchase. So now I own that one as well. And it's definitely worth putting the money out for these apps, because there's a lot of work that goes into making them, for one, and it helps support the developers and lets them improve on it and everything else. But I mean, don't be afraid to spend a few bucks on something that you plan on using a lot. So that covers the capture side of the photos, of taking pictures with your new phone. Now you may want to try doing a little bit of editing. So I think the first thing that people are going to look at is right in the Photos app. You can have a picture pulled up, and then in the top right corner, it'll say Edit. And that opens up the editing suite where you've got different controls you can do an automatic thing where it uses machine learning to figure out what, parts of the picture need this and that and everything else, and it'll optimize the image. But even from there, you can start playing with the brightness, the contrast, the whites, the highlights, the shadows, a plethora of different adjustments that you can make, all right within the Photos app, and it's pretty darn good. Have you guys been using that much lately, or you kind of veer over to the third-party stuff?
Yeah, I haven't really. I've been more third party myself. Haven't really been using the built-in editing features. I don't really know why. I just I don't know. I think because a lot of times I'm editing raw photos, and typically while the built-in app does now have a lot more parameters you could adjust, there's just typically more more things I want to be able to do than what the built-in app allows.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Yeah, I mean, if you have a 12 Pro and you shoot in Apple Pro RAW, you can adjust those Pro RAWs in the Photos app. Other than that, there's only two apps that I know of that can process those images properly, and that's Darkroom and Raw Power. I don't know of any other apps that have added that capability yet. And there's a thing called local tone map that it has to recognize and be able to adjust in order to work with those specific file types. But that's getting too deep for this episode.
Yeah.
So
that's a little bit much right there.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean,
charge for that episode.
Yeah. That's where you can end up going, down the road. But anyway, but no, the Photos app it's plain and simple. It's right there. It's great for doing edits. And if you don't like what you've done with your image, you can always go back into the editing suite later on and revert it back to the way it was when you first shot it. So that's a pretty nice feature to have.
Yeah.
So Matt, your favorite is Polar, is it not?
It is 100%.
Yeah. So just, a couple of features that really stand out with Polar that really tickle your fancy. What would they be?
All right. So this is going to sound completely ridiculous. Actually, it's 100% ridiculous. So in Polar, which is Polarr, there's different tabs to do different things, and kind of the third one over from the left is called Adjust, and that's where you'll find all the options for adjusting contrast and saturation and sharpening, the things that people typically think of when they think of just editing a picture. I use the auto feature in the Adjust tab pretty much 100% of the time, because it gives me a very good starting point. Now, I don't click auto and just leave it there because I never like the result, but some of the things that it does, I was going to do that anyway. So it just makes it real quick. It basically gives me less things to adjust, right? So like one of the things that it does, it adds like a certain level of clarity to the picture, which I find acceptable, and I was going to go in and have to do that anyway. It adds a dehaze effect, which most of the time I find very pleasing on the type of pictures that I take. Basically, it is kind of like removing haze. It's essentially like adding some like micro contrast is kind of like what it is to the picture, and I like that a lot. So those are like just two things real quick that it does for me. And then even parameters like exposure and contrast and adjusting highlights and shadows, I have to tweak that stuff a little bit, but it does a pretty good job of kind of figuring out maybe what it should look like, and it just makes my job a whole lot easier and faster, I find.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's and then another thing that I like too. Let's say you took a picture that maybe has like I don't know, just any picture that has maybe a dark foreground and like a bright sky or something, and you're trying to kind of balance that out somehow. Now, Polar doesn't have layers. It doesn't have the ability to work in layers. And honestly, if you I apologize about the background noise right now. Sorry about that. Okay. if you're a beginner, you probably don't really want to be messing around with layers and stuff anyway. So I think this actually might be a good feature to not have layers. But one of the things that it does have is kind of like artificial intelligence selection modes. So, for instance, if you were trying to adjust, like, let's say, a sky to make it maybe a little bit more blue or darker or whatever you wanted to do, you can go in and click on selections, and it has this list. It'll be like the ground or the sky or vegetation or just, a linear gradient or maybe even a certain color. And then you could also go in and kind of do your own selections via like a brush or, however you want to do it or whatever. But those like artificial intelligence things, they're awesome. Like being able for it to just know what the sky is in your picture and be able to select that. And when you make your adjustments, then it's only adjusting the sky, or you could invert that selection so you're adjusting the foreground or whatever. Super cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I saw that
feature. I don't know if
in
any
the
of
app.
that made sense at all, but well, it's hard to explain.
Yeah, I saw that feature in the app when I was kind of playing around with it, but I didn't try it out. And now you've got me curious. I want to give that a try and just play around with that and see how it works. Because I was playing with an image one time, and there was something about the sky that I wanted to do, and I didn't have an app I didn't think I had an app that could do that. And now I know that all I got to do is open up Polar, which I have, and try it out. And I'd have to go back and see if I could find the image again. But yeah, that is a really cool feature, and it's not. Maybe something that people would think about right off the bat, but as they get using their phones and get taking more and more photos, there may be a situation where they want to just fix the sky or just fix the ground, and that's a great way to do that. Dave, go ahead, Matt. Are you gonna?
Oh, yeah. Just one other thing that I think is really cool about the app. So it does use a lot of like artificial intelligence, and let's say. You take a lot of portraits or, just pictures with people in them in general. It does have the ability to recognize faces, not to where it's like, hey, this is, your wife or whatever. It's not like that. It just recognizes that this is a face, right? And it could recognize like all the faces in a picture. And it'll have like it has a retouch feature, and it gives you the ability, because it can recognize each face, you can retouch each face individually. So, let's say there's two people in the picture. If one person maybe needs a little bit more like skin smoothing or something than another person, your editing is not global across the picture. You can edit literally one face at a time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another feature that I don't use Polar a whole lot. The more I talk to you about it, the more I keep thinking I should be. But yeah, it's a very powerful program, and now, is it subscription based, or is it a one-time buy?
It's actually.
I want to say they went to
purchases.
A subscription,
but it's a script. It work. You can use it because I use it without purchasing it, but some of the features are subscription only.
Okay.
And so if you want, here we go. And actually, I just opened it up. If you want the Pro, what they call Polar Pro, it's $20 a year, or you can do a monthly subscription of $4 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a 7-day free trial.
Okay. And the free trial gives you everything, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's the overlays with like the overlays. If you only have the free version, the overlays, you can only do brightness and contrast. You can't do additional color corrections on the overlays.
Yeah. Okay.
Or you can't do batch saves or backing up styles type thing. It's
Yeah.
pretty powerful though, even without the upgrade.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for looking that up.
It's also accessible from right inside the Photos app. So if you select a photo, any photo in your Photos app, the Photos app. You know what I'm trying to say. And click you go into the edit mode. So you click edit, and then once you're there, you click the three little dots that are probably up in the right-hand corner. That'll bring up a list of all the apps that work as basically extensions. So you can, like in my case, I've got a whole bunch actually that work as extensions, but I could select Polar, and it opens right in Polar. So the advantage to doing this is that you're not creating a copy of the picture when you're editing it. You're basically editing that picture, but it's doing it non-destructively. So like if you make edits and then 5 minutes later you're like, why the heck did I do, why did I crank the contrast to 100? That was stupid. You can, revert back to the original picture and start over again.
Yeah, that's a nice feature.
Although I have noticed a lot of apps now, even if you're in an app like Polar, like if you click Polar, on your phone, open the app and then open a photo to edit in it, or like Snapseed or whatever, you can make changes to the original photo, and then it gives you a pop-up that'll say, allow this app to modify this image, and you click OK, and then you don't end up with like tons of copies of the same picture in your Photos app.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes storage could be limited for for some folks, but so that's always a good thing. Dave, you got a favorite? I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
Well, there's actually two that I use a good amount. I'm going to go with the one that actually is a little more, I don't want to say basic, but one that I use to correct issues, and that's Touch Retouch, which is one I learned from Matt. From
great app.
When we're on, it's $1.99, but what it can do is magic. Basically, it is a straight removal app. So if you're taking a picture and there is a telephone pole in it, or even a wire, let's say the telephone pole you can't see, but you can see the wires in the sky. And this is something it's iPhone, iPad, which is nice. And it is built, it does have an extension. So you don't even have to, like with Polar, like Matt was saying, you can just hit the three dots, go right into it. Now when you go into it, it kills the live photo feature. So it can't edit live photo. So it makes it just a flat photo, which in my mind, by the time I'm up to this point, I'm fine with the composition of the photo. So I don't really need the live feature that much. Plus, it like every other edit, it's not destructive. So you can always pull it back and go back to the original. But you just, you get three options: object removal, repair, or line removal. And you just do that line removal. You just have to put your finger over it. It notices where the line is. And unless you're trying to take out something like a large car that's in the middle of a scene, which I did once, but it works mostly. But if you're trying to do something major like that, it gets a little much. But if you're doing things like, I noticed an object where in a shot where like, I didn't want that there, but you couldn't remove the object or you couldn't do anything about it. You just put your finger over it for either object removal or correction, and it'll blend it in. It'll make it look like it was never there in the first place.
And it does such a good job of it too. Like
Oh,
in a
it
lot
does.
of cases, like there's some
Yeah.
sometimes it just depends on what it has to work with within the image. But
Yeah.
in
I
a
was saying,
lot of cases,
it's magic, but it's not that magic.
yeah, yeah,
It's
no,
still
it
doing a
is
lot of
really
it on its
impressive.
own. It's still doing a lot of it on its own, where all you have to do is basically kind of put your finger over where you're interested in having it adjusted, and like you'll do it. And like I said, a lot of times you won't even know. You can show someone the picture afterwards, and it isn't. Well, if people have seen bad photoshops, you can look at it and say, okay, that wasn't part of the original photo. For the most part, with touch retouch, unless you know that unless you tell someone you remove something, they won't notice it.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's
You
right.
know,
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
is really amazing. It could save a lot of photos where it's like, oh, this would be perfect, except it had blot in it that I couldn't. It's part of the scene. I couldn't remove it. I couldn't shift the way I was. Give it a try. And like I said, for $199, and it's a one-time purchase. It is amazing what it can do. Definitely amazing what it can do.
Well, just a real quick note on touch retouch. There's a Mac version for that too. And when my son got married, he got married outside on a really beautiful, gorgeous, hot, sunny day. And there was a photographer there doing pictures. But I mean, I was shooting with my phone like crazy anyway. And it was when the wedding party was coming down the aisle and it was sun, like I say, the sun was shining. Um, some of the pictures, and I don't know if it's just because my phone got too hot because I was taking too many pictures at a time or whatever, but some of the pictures had these orbs all over the images. And I wanted to clean them up. And I was trying to do it on the phone. It was just getting so cumbersome. I went to the Mac App Store, bought the app, and it was so good at taking these weird circles off of people's, the dresses and the suits and all this stuff. And it really did a great job of that. It basically saved a lot of wedding pictures. I mean, these were just for my own personal, enjoyment, these pictures. But the last thing I wanted on my son's wedding pictures was to have all these circles on people, and it just cleaned them all up so well. So, worth the price to go get that one too. Like even like just the iPhone or the iPad app will probably do everything you need it to do. The Mac app is a lot more expensive, I think, but yeah, it's a great app, very well developed, and can sure work some magic when you want it to. So you have another one, Dave?
Well, the other one, and this is something that's, again, this isn't so much I have a photo and I want to see what it looks like and I want it edited so it's close to what I saw, or at least what I imagine in my mind what the image would look like, which I think Touch Retouch does, is the Photoshop camera. It is Adobe, it is Photoshop, but you don't have to, it is free, you don't have to pay for it. You don't even have to have an Adobe login. So they accept either Apple login or Facebook. So all those wonderful people who are, pay so much for all the Adobe products are basically subsidizing this for basically, I can kind of say this as a entry level drug. Where Adobe says, hey, look at this free Photoshop camera and look at all the amazing things. You want the full-blown version, don't you? Don't you want this wonderful subscription down the road? But it's nice too. It's a couple things. One, it does have a built-in fix or a built-in enhancement edit where you can just click a button, and it has some other part, but honestly, the additional editing isn't anything better than what the built-in photo app can do. The auto enhance does help for if you have some dark shadows you want to bring up and make it a little more vibrant. But I also like the filters on here, because if you want to do something like, oh, I want to replace this sky with just kind of a cartoony deep space sky, and there's very little you can do on it other than, yes, that's the filter I want, and this is the intensity I want on it. So you can't say, well, oh, it looks like it's missing some of the, you know. That's why I think it's also a good beginner for just getting creative with filters, is that there's not a lot of extra little things you can do. So you're not going to get lost in the details or trying to get overwhelmed. You basically say, that's the look I want, and it does an amazing job with masking out, let's say, the sky, or masking out this, or, oh, there's my main subject and I want to do something where you only see that with some colors and things. It'll actually do a pretty good job saying, okay, that is the main subject, that is the mask, and its mask is pretty good. And like I said, nice thing is it's free. You can do some little creative things with it and just kind of go wild with photos, and without having to invest a lot of time and effort, especially if you're a first timer or you're new to it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've seen people do is put like star trails in the sky. I believe that's one of the options, isn't it? Like,
it is, yeah.
You can make it look like a time lapse exposure or whatever, with the streaks of stars going across, and it does a really good job of masking out just the sky and giving it that effect. So yeah, and you said it was free?
Yeah, it's free, 100% free. You don't have to have a Photoshop subscription or Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. It's completely free. Like I say, don't even need to make an Adobe login. If you want to use a Facebook or your Apple login, the app where the Apple gave you that option to log in using Apple ID, you don't even have to do any of that.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
My favorite for editing, if you've listened to the show before, it's no secret, it would be Lumibee. What I like about Lumibee is it's designed and it's laid out to take you through the editing process rather quickly. So when you open the image, you've got there's filters that you can use in Lumibee. I'm not a big filter guy, but there's the first option is to crop the photo, and you got your square, you got your 4:3, which is a native camera app's ratio. Then you can go with 3:2 and then 16:9, and then you've got vertical options for those as well, and then you've also got square. Excuse me. So once you get your crop the way you want it, then you can go into, if you want to give it a filter, you can give it a filter. Lumibee is free, and there's an in-app purchase for extra filters. The developers worked with a professional photographer and come up with these, some of these cool looks and stuff like that. But then once you get into the editing itself, then you've got your basic functions, which is your exposure and your contrast, and something called structure. And I think structure is more like a heavier contrast adjustment. I'm not sure how to explain it exactly, but it kind of acts like a clarity function or a dehazer in a way. But then from there, you've got your color adjustments, so your saturation and your vibrance, and your temperature and your tint. And Lumibee can also process raw photos too. So if it's a raw photo, there will be a raw tag on some of these adjustments, like color, temperature, and that. But generally, it's really good for just doing JPEGs or the high efficiency files. So then after that, you go to your tones, which is your highlights, your lights, your darks, and your shadows, and you can play around with those and slide them around, get it to look the way you want. And then finally, on the finalize screen, you got your vignette, sharpen, and you can add grain to it if you want to make it a grainy image. Or you've got fade, and fade reminds me of what VSCO Cam or that VSCO app does. There's a lot of different, like what it does is it just brings down the contrast and gives it a faded look. So, and that, that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple, gets you through the process quickly if you want to do a quick edit. And then on the share screen at the end, you can save the image, or you can save it as a new image. So it will actually make a copy. Um, and then you can share it to Instagram. And there's another one that says others, and that goes for that. Well, that just brings up the iOS share sheet where, you can send it as a text, or, email the picture, put it on Twitter, whatever. So it's a good app. It's what they've introduced recently too is that you can, if you find that you're editing your apps the same way all the time, which I pretty much do, you can make a preset so that when you bring in a photo, and if you think you want to just give it your own personal look to it, you can go to the presets and just hit that button, and it just puts all those adjustments on it, and then you could tweak it a bit more from there, I guess. But yeah, it's free. Nice, powerful little app, and made by a couple of guys over in the Czech Republic, and they've been. It used to be. I think when I bought it, it was $4.99 here in Canada. And then it was a couple of years after that, they just put it out for free, and then made these extra filters, the in-app purchases. So, but yeah, it's a good little app for editing photos, and like I say, it gets you through the process quickly. If you're one who doesn't want to spend a lot of time editing and playing around with it, it's a good one to look at, and it's free, so why not? But other than that, the only other one I want to mention before we finish up here is one that Mark Sadowski told us about, and it's called Ramini, I think. I'm just looking up here. I believe it's REM. Where is it? Yes, REMINI. It's Ramini AI Photo Enhancer, and it's for editing blurry pictures and video. And when he first told me about it, or he actually told us in a group chat here, I was a little hesitant on trying it because it's hard to take a blurry picture with these phones nowadays. They're so quick at getting focus and everything else. But it's what it did for me was I took a picture of a self-portrait, and I used my iPhone XS Max. I used the Moment telephoto lens on top of that camera, and the result was just so disappointing. What it does is it really made it look pixelated, because that particular camera doesn't let much light in, so it was just a poor quality photo, just really bad quality. It was pixelated and just didn't look good at all. So I ran it through this Ramini app, and it just cleaned the photo up so well. Not just my face and my clothes and stuff, but it made the background look nice and sharp and crisp, and whereas before it was so dull and everything else. If you find you've got a blurry picture and you want to clean it up, you can give that one a try, and it'll be in the show notes as well. It's free to try. I think there may be a certain number of photos that you can use through it for free before it starts to, ask for a subscription or whatever. But I was really surprised at how well it cleaned the picture up. So, just something to think about if you find yourself you got a blurry photo or pixelated or the poor quality or whatever. You can always try running it through Ramini and see what you get. So I think that's about covers it, hey guys? I put you to sleep, didn't I?
Nope. I think we're both on mute. We're both on mute. So
I was on mute. Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I mean, it does get, and you know what? And I would say don't get overwhelmed, because we did talk about a few different things here. And my suggestion is also, you don't have to try everything at once.
Yeah, that's right.
If there's something like, if you're starting to take pictures and you only want to use the built-in app, go for it. There's tons of stuff to, or just do built-in editing. There's tons of things there. But if you're like, man, I wish I could do this, or I have this situation, and you're like, oh, I remember those guys talked about, oh, I wanted to get a close, but oh yeah, macro. I remember they talked to, or oh, I wanted to do this instead, or oh, there was that additional editing that Matt talked about in Polar, with that
Mm-hmm.
weird, and they spell it weird too, which all apps spell things weird.
Yeah. But
And
and
yeah,
there's like you say, you don't have to start digging into the heavy stuff. Just start out simple and if I had a word of advice to give to somebody who is just starting out doing this, I would just say take pictures and just take as many as you want. You could always delete them if you don't. If they just turn out totally bad, if you don't want them, you can delete them. It's not like back in the film days where you had to be careful how you shoot. You had to get it right the first time. But shoot to your heart's content. Take as many pictures as you want. Just practice, practice, practice. Study your pictures, and just try to improve on them. And the only other thing is if you want inspiration, go to Instagram or Flickr and look at other photos, and whether they're taken with a phone or not, they'll be inspiring. And I know that's what I do to this day. I still look at other people's images and get inspired at to try that, or improve how I take a picture. So Matt, do you have any advice to give a new photographer?
Just similar to what you guys were saying. What Dave was saying earlier is take it slow, and just shoot. Like I know for probably all of us, when we started out, taking pictures with the iPhone. I don't think any of us were really new to photography per se, but the phone was like it was just a whole new thing. And, there weren't apps available at the time, but, I just think as we've been going along, we're all kind of building our skills in terms of taking pictures and editing. We're getting ideas as we go along about how we want our pictures to look, and then, figuring out, usually just through Google or YouTube or whatever, how to achieve that result. And, that's kind of how you find out about, some of these different apps, because there's just so many now. It's hard to even know where to begin. So I think the takeaway is really to just take pictures, and if the result that you get right from the iPhone camera is what you're looking for, then cool, stop there. And if you're looking to do something a little bit more than that, take it slow. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but just figure out, what is it you're trying to do, and then find that app that will allow you to do. That's all I got.
I think we lost you. Oh,
Uh-oh.
I thought we lost you there for a sec. Yeah. And, something else that might be worth trying is go to tinyshutter.com, and there's a whole pile of past episodes where we talk about different apps and methods and different things to do with iPhone photography. Tiny Shutter was where I met Dave and Matt and Mark Sadowski and Joseph Ferreira, and eventually I was a co-host on there with everybody, and we had a lot of fun talking about this stuff, about different apps, like I say, different apps, different ways of doing things, different techniques and stuff, and you can go through the catalog for this podcast as well, and there may be something there. Everything's in the show notes for both podcasts. Tiny Shutter's not a regular show anymore. Still comes out once in a while, but if you're looking for information, those are some great resources as well. And on that note, I think we'll tie it off, and because I think we've gone on a little longer than we normally do, but I mean, I know we could talk about this for hours, but I just don't know how long people want to listen to it. But so Matt, tell people where they could find you.
All right, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Flickr. I'm not even sure where else. Those are probably the main places right now at M Hoffman Photo.
All right. Dave, where can they find you?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Prof Pod. You can find me on the Tiny Shutter Facebook group as Dave Podner. And Greg, when you mentioned the Tiny Shutter podcast, I just happened to look out of curiosity. On January 4th, 2012 was the launch of the Tiny Shutter podcast.
And that's today.
That is today. So we are on the 9-year anniversary of Tiny Shutter launching and talking about Instagram passing 25 million users.
How cool is that? Okay, so now everybody, you got to check it out. Check out Tiny Shutter. Go to tinyshutter.com.
Listen to Matt, Mark, and Keith from 9 years ago.
Yeah, I have yet to do that, so I think I'm going to do that. I'm gonna go listen to that one. And
I don't think Matt's going to do that, but
no, well, probably not.
Well, that's awesome. And this podcast has been almost a year, I think. It hasn't come out regularly, but it's bi-weekly now, I think. So it'll be semi-regular, as long as life doesn't get in the way. But you can find me on Instagram at Macmillan Photo, on Twitter, Macmillan_photo. And you can find links to all my online presences at about.me/Macmillan. So that's MCMILLAN. Like I say, we do the show every couple of weeks, and as long as nothing gets in the way of it. And you can find this podcast at iphonography.ca, and it's on the Apple Podcast app, on iHeartRadio, and hopefully just about anywhere else where you can get a podcast, you'll find it. Just do a search for iPhonography Podcast, and it should come up. And you can find the Artful iPhonography community, which is basically where this podcast started from. You can find it at artfulipc.club, which is just a community of like-minded folks who create photos and artwork with their iPhones, and it's a community on the MeWe platform. It's not on Facebook or whatever. It's on a website called MeWe, and if you go to artfulipc.club, it'll take you right to that page. So we have over 50 members now, and it's a pretty good community. It's a lot of good folks on it, and it's a lot of fun, sharing what we do, and I always say, teach what you know and learn what you don't. So that's what it's all about. So on that note, thanks guys. Thanks Matt for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
my pleasure. Thanks for. I was going to say thanks for having me on, and I think you and Dave are doing an awesome job with this podcast, by the way.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. If it wasn't for Tiny Shutter, I probably wouldn't be doing this. Getting into podcasting, and so I have a real debt of gratitude to Mark and you and Joe and you, Dave. You were there before I was, and it was a lot of fun, and we just hope to continue that ride through this one. And And, I don't know about you guys, but I'm glad 2020 is over. This is 2021 now, and I'm hoping that we have brighter roads ahead. So,
true.
We will carry on and keep snapping, and we will see you guys, or see you, Dave, in a couple of weeks. And Matt, if you're available, you're always welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one, guys.
Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.